You know, I think this headline is being generous. Accost is putting it mildly. Harassed would be a better word for it. But you can see for yourself later, as I've got some footage to show you. But first, let's get into the story of Candace Owens and Charlie Kirk harassed by far-left extremists. Antifa protesters accost conservatives Charlie Kirk and Candace Owens at Philadelphia café. Two prominent conservative activists were accosted Monday outside a Philadelphia restaurant by a group of profanity-hurling protesters allegedly aligned with Antifa. Yes, they were Antifa. Look at this paragraph from, of all places, the CNN incarnation of the story. Owens told CNN that the protesters, who bore an Antifa sticker, immediately recognized Kirk and her, and a much larger group approached the restaurant about 20 minutes later. She said the protesters began harassing and throwing things at Kirk and her from outside the restaurant. Add to that the fact that Antifa aren't exactly denying it. In fact, Antifa Philadelphia actually tweeted about it afterwards, gloating, and I'd say that we can be pretty sure that it was them. Turning Point USA founder Charlie Kirk and communications director Candace Owens were attempting to eat breakfast at the Green Eggs Cafe near Center City, when the group gathered outside and aggressively harassed them. Of course they did, because that's what Antifa do. That's how they treat the people who they perceive to be fascists, which is basically pretty much everyone who isn't a member of their group. They harass them, they shout smears at them, and in some cases, they physically assault them. In video footage posted on Owens' Twitter page, the protesters can be seen shouting and blowing whistles in the conservative commentators' faces while chanting "F white supremacy." Owens is black. Candace Owens isn't black to them. Not anymore. Candace Owens forfeited her black card, and her woman card for that matter, the minute that it became known that she was a conservative. I'm speaking metaphorically, of course, but this is just an indication of what utter lunatics these people are, that a bunch of them, who are nearly all, if not absolutely all, white, would stand around chanting, "Fuck white supremacy," at two people, one of whom was a black woman. The video also shows one of the protesters dumping a bottle of water on Kirk. That's technically assault, by the way. Although it wasn't what I was meaning earlier when I said that they sometimes physically assault people. They have been known to actually beat people up, and even worse. In another video posted on Owens' Twitter account, Philadelphia police officers can be seen trying to separate the two conservatives from the protesters as Owens yells back at the crowd, "We love the police, we love America, we love the USA." Whereas, of course, Antifa hate those things. They make no secret of it. Kirk and Owens, who were in Philadelphia to meet with Turning Point USA board members and hold business meetings, quickly took to Twitter to denounce the protesters and liberals for not criticizing the Antifa mob. If an angry conservative mob formed while two young liberals, one white guy and a black woman, were eating breakfast, and the mob hurled horrific insults, threw objects and assaulted them, the left would call it a hate crime, and every major outlet would be demanding condemnation, Kirk tweeted. Yes, and here is that tweet. He's quite right, of course. If it had been the other way around, the American mainstream news media, nearly all of whom are left-wing, would have squeezed every last bit out of the story that they could, and we would be hearing about it for the next 2 years or so. Owens, who called Antifa an all-white fascist organization, in an earlier tweet, thanked the police for their help. Well, I don't know about the all-white bit, although most if not all of this particular mob were, but they're certainly fascistic. Ironic really, seeing as they claim to be fighting fascism. Perhaps, if they really want to fight fascism, they need to take a long, hard look in the mirror. Would like to personally and publicly thank the Philly police force for keeping us safe today. As you can see in the video, they were all Hispanic and black, she tweeted. Which is more irony. Because listen to what these lunatics started chanting at one point.
Cops and Klan, hand in hand! Cops and Klan, hand in hand! Cops and Klan, hand in hand! Cops and Klan! No, wait, the one make sure she gets out. Hand in hand! Cops and Klan, hand in hand! Cops and Klan, hand in hand!
Yes, you heard that right. They were literally alleging some sort of collusion, or at the very least, similar mindset, between the police and the Ku Klux Klan. In front of a bunch of black and Hispanic police officers. That is how delusional these people are. The protests in Philadelphia are the latest in a series of public attacks on conservative officials and commentators in recent months as the divide over President Trump's policies continues to widen. In June, White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders was told to leave a Virginia restaurant following a tumultuous week where the administration was forced to walk back a policy separating immigrant families caught illegally crossing the border. Well, that's fine. As I understand it, under American law, the restaurant staff have the right to refuse to serve anyone that they want to. That's their prerogative. But it's also their loss. That's one little bit of money that that restaurant is now not going to get. Also earlier this summer, Homeland Security Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen had to cut short a working dinner at a Mexican restaurant in Washington after protesters shouted, "Shame." Protesters later gathered outside Nielsen's Virginia townhouse, chanting, "No justice, no sleep," and playing recordings of immigrant children crying. That, however, is not fine. I don't remember this story, but the fact that it says that they were chanting, "No justice, no sleep," suggests to me that they were doing this in the middle of the night. If that was the case, and they were chanting, presumably loudly, and playing recordings of children crying, immigrant or otherwise, then that doesn't exactly sound like a peaceful protest to me. It sounds more like a breach of the peace. After all, does the woman have any neighbors? Is their sleep or lack thereof just collateral damage to these people? Florida Attorney General and ardent Trump supporter Pam Bondi was also recently confronted by a group of protesters outside the screening of a documentary about Mr. Rogers in Tampa. Conservatives have pinned the blame for such confrontations in part on Democratic Representative Maxine Waters, who urged supporters to swarm cabinet members at gas stations and anywhere else they're seen. Curious. I wonder why they would blame her, eh?
And if you see anybody from that cabinet in a restaurant, in a department store, at a gasoline station, you get out and you create a crowd. And you push back on them. And you tell them they're not welcome.
Now, I don't think this particular incident with Kirk and Owens was because of that speech by Waters. The far left have had a problem with Kirk and Owens since long before Maxine Waters came into the picture, but this grossly irresponsible incitement by a public official is only going to make things worse. Why won't Democrat leaders denounce these Antifa thugs? Kirk tweeted on Monday, "This is the new base of the Democrat Party. They hate America and will go to violent measures to attack conservatives. This is Maxine Waters, America, she called for these sort of attacks." Well, she didn't call for actual physical attacks, but you just know that some loons are going to take it that way. The clock is ticking now. Sooner or later some far-left thug is bound to commit a violent assault in her name. And then what, eh?